Today we're going to talk about the Dharma door of non-duality. This is from the Nonduality Sutra. It talks about the concept of non-duality. Hopefully it'll help us live a life that's full of wisdom and happiness. In terms of non-duality, first we have to talk about the two truths. One is called the ultimate truth. Two is called the conventional truth. The ultimate truth is what we call the absolute truth. The conventional truth is what we call the relative truth. So everything has two aspects. Ultimate truth, the thing that's invisible, that is its essence, and there's always the conventional truth, what it appears in form, what we can see, that's visible. So one is substance, that's invisible, that's the heart, that's the mind, and one is the form, that is visible, that is the phenomenon. So this is the inner truth, this is the phenomenon. So in terms of phenomenon, it's always in duality, such as pure, impure, transcendental, mundane, attention, distraction, good, evil, self, others, large, small. Non-duality, duality. We need to see the world without duality because they are in oppositions. Oppositions, they are not the essence. They always have obstructions. We want to live in this conventional world but enter into the substance, the inner truth, the mind of all things. That's what we call enlightenment. Forms always have forms because of condition arising. Substance is without forms. It is what it is. So they are not the same, but they are not different. They are not apart from each other. You always have form, you always have substance. You just need to see that the forms are illusory. They are unreal. Then you will see the true substance, the true inner truth. We will explain this non-duality in terms of the two truths with examples from chapters of the Nonduality Sutra. First, let's look at the difference between pure and impure. In the very first chapter, it talks about the Pure Land. How does the Pure Land come about? If our mind is pure, then the land is pure. The land is the result of the cause, which is always our mind. So if you want to make this world a better place, you change your mind. You purify your mind. That's called true pure land. After Shariputra heard this, he had a thought. This world is so impure. Shakyamuni Buddha must be such an impure bodhisattva. That's why this world is so corrupted. Buddha is all-knowing. He heard his thought. Buddha said, Shariputra, do not think this world is impure. This world is impure only because your mind is impure. If you will only see how I see this world. So Buddha put his big toe on the ground. All of a sudden, everybody saw this world as Buddha sees it. It's full of splendors, virtues, and precious jewels. It's the most beautiful, perfect world. Shariputra realized, I never saw this world as Buddha saw it. The world is pure to the extent that your mind is pure. So the difference between pure and impure is only your mind. So that's the first chapter. Now let's talk about transcendental and mundane. Some people might want to live in the monastics, thinking that's better to cultivate. They don't want to be in this world full of ordinary people with worldly desires. The second chapter, layman Nonduality. He is not a monk. He's a super wealthy businessman with a wife and children, but he is more religious than any monk that we know. He goes to brothels to demonstrate the evil of sexual desires, and he goes to casinos to teach them not to be attached to gambling, and he goes to bars to teach drunks to have mindfulness. He can mix into any crowd and eloquently expound the Dharma. He lives in non-duality. To him, there is no difference between being a layman or being in the monastics, because his mind is so firm in the Dharma. So that's the second chapter. The third chapter, duality of attention and distraction. We often sit in quiet meditation, put our attention on mindfulness. We think that's the best way to cultivate. But in the sutra, it talks about how distraction and attention are not so different. In the third chapter, Vimalakirti manifested to be sick in order to expound incredible Dharma. All Buddha's disciples, they were all reluctant to pay him a visit because Vimalakirti always corrected their Dharma. For example, Shriputra, one time he was sitting under a tree meditating. Vimalakirti came and said, that's not the way to absorb in contemplation. That's not how you meditate. You should meditate in such a way that you manifest ordinary behavior without forsaking cessation, which means you should just be in meditation in your daily experience while sitting, standing, eating, in ordinary behaviors. And also you should absorb in contemplation so the mind is neither settled within nor moves without in the external form. There is no difference between attention and distraction. It's all how your mind is dwelling in the non-duality of your one true mind, your true suchness. Now let's talk about the duality in terms of good and evil. One of the Bodhisattva, his name is maintained in the world. One time he was at home. Mara disguised himself as Indra, the god, appeared with 12,000 goddesses. And he said, I would like to give these goddesses to you. This Bodhisattva said, I'm a cultivator. It's not proper for me to have these goddesses. All of a sudden, Vimalakirti appeared and said, this is not Indra. This is actually Mara. He is trying to ridicule you, to give you these goddesses. Mara is very distressed and he wanted to flee. But a voice in the sky said, you better give the 12,000 goddesses to him, then you can leave. So he gave the goddesses to Vimalakirti. Vimalakirti started teaching these goddesses Dharma. They all became enlightened and had great bodhi resolve. After a while, Mara came back to take these goddesses back because the goddesses are now bodhisattvas. They don't want to go back to the palace of the Mara, but Mara insists on taking them back. So Vimalakirti said, don't worry, you can go back to where you came from because I'm going to teach you the doorway of inexhaustible lamp. Go back to this place of the Mara. You are now a lamp. One lamp can light up hundreds and thousands of lamps without itself being diminished. You will be like a bodhisattva, one lighting up the others. The realm of Mara will be lit up. They will all have bodhi resolve and reach enlightenment. So go back without being afraid. The goddesses heard of this Dharma and went back with Mara. So there is no difference between good and evil. It's all in your heart. Even if you're in a very corrupted environment, you can still teach them Dharma and change them into bodhisattvas. The duality between good and evil should be let go. Be an inexhaustible lamp. Now let's talk about the difference between self and others. In the 5th chapter, Bodhisattva Manjushri paid a visit to Vimalakirti. He said, how come you are sick? He says, my sickness comes from the sickness of all living beings. Because living beings are sick, that's why I am sick. There's no difference to him between self and others. All other sentient beings, they are like his only child. Only if this child is cured, then he will be cured. And he talks about how we are sick. We are all sick because we think this body, this self, is permanent and is me. We have a strong ego thinking this is the self. Vimalakarti is using his sickness to teach us that we are all sick, thinking there is a real me, a real self. That's why we are all selfish. Out of his great compassion, he is trying to show us how sick we are. So the whole society is sick, the entire world is sick because our mind is not in the right place. We are not back to this non-duality, the substance of our mind, this true nature. Now let's talk about the duality between large and small. We think large and small is an opposition, but to a bodhisattva, there's actually no opposition. In the 6th chapter, with Bodhisattva Manjushri, everybody came with him to visit Vimalakarti. So the empty room had to fit hundreds and thousands of people. Sariputta thought, oh, how can we have no place to sit? Vimalakarti, he did a miraculous feat by transforming 32,000 chairs into his little room. How did these 32,000 chairs fit in his little room? Because there is no difference between large and small in terms of the mind, in terms of the essence. The difference between large and small is only concept. But mundane, we don't know the difference. That's why to us, they are in opposition. The largest mountain in Buddhism is Mount Sumeru. Mount Sumeru can fit into a mustard seed without having to enlarge the mustard seed or shrink the mountain. Why? Because to a bodhisattva, there is no difference between large and small. For example, your mind is so small in this little skull, but all the books you have studied your entire life is where? It's here. The book doesn't fit in here, but it's all in your brain. So in terms of the mind, the substance, the inner truth, there is no duality. There is no opposition of any kind. Lastly, in chapter 9, it actually talks directly about the Dharma door of non-duality. 33 bodhisattvas, they talk about what is duality, such as what is pure, impure, transcendental, mundane, attention, distraction, good, and evil. They talk about all these. At the end, Bodhisattva Manjushri asked Vimalakarti, how do we enter the principle of non-duality? Vimalakarti, he kept his silence. He did not speak a word. Bodhisattva Manjushri said, wonderful, wonderful. That is the way to enter non-duality. Because non-duality is without syllables, without words, without concepts. In this substance, in this ultimate truth, in our pure mind, there is no concepts, no words, no language that need to be said. That is true non-duality. In conclusion, what we need to do is be like a Buddha who is an expert in the deep analysis of things, yet dwell in the ultimate meaning. This summarizes these two truths. We need to live in this conventional world, still be an expert in analyzing all the differences. There is still difference because we live in this world between pure and impure, between transcendental and mundane. It's just that you dwell in this ultimate meaning, which is the substance without any visible forms. Be away from duality inside, but you still live this conventional life, which means you are not attached to anyone or anything, because all the forms, all the duality you see are only illusory. It's like things happening in a dream. They're only concepts of the mind. That is what we call true enlightenment. This is the highest Dharma, the principle of non-duality. Doesn't matter if you're a layman or you're a monk, or we live in a pure world right now, or a very corrupted world. Nothing really matters. What matters is where you reside, where you dwell, in this heart that is without any opposition, no judgment. We call it the true suchness. So that's the class for today. Thank you for listening. Amitabha.